All right, welcome to episode 57 of Biomassed tonight, folks. We appreciate you tuning in either on our live stream or via iTunes. So again, we really appreciate the feedback we've been getting, and we've had a ton of downloads over the last month and a half or so, and things are looking very good. And we really appreciate a lot of the feedback. So without further ado, we'll save some of that for our shout outs on the way out of the show, but we've got we're a little bit smaller crowd tonight. There's about 6 of us on. We might have a couple drop-ins. And what we wanted to do is talk a little bit tonight about some of the CPM2 goings on. This might be a bit of a shorter show than we usually have, but that being said, we generally will always find a rat hole to go down at some point that'll extend the life of the show. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get some intros in. And what we're going to do is we're going to start right at the top of the list. So, Sarai Zell, intro, please.
I'm Sarai Zell, a member of CPM1, a co-host here on the show, and an editor on the podcast.
No.
Jay has gone AFK.
I think we lost Jay.
I think we lost Jay.
Okay, we'll just keep going then. I'll start with Bait. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm Bait. I'm a director over at the Demonic Cowboys, and I'm a writer for the Biomassed blog.
Sounds good, man. Cat?
Hey, I'm Merc, a forum person from Negative Feedback, and I have more time on the forum than the actual game.
You and half the community, I think. All right, Cross?
Cross2 from OSG, current member of CPM1, candidate for CPM2, and general forum rat.
All right, and
check, check, 1, 2, check, 1, 1, 2, check.
He's alive.
He's back. All right, it's your turn, actually, so go ahead.
Absolutely. And as I'm reliving my days as a roadie for Whitesnake and getting my mic check on, I am Jason Larson, a member of OSG Planetary Operations. As they say, there's such a thing as an army of one or a corp of three, and I've referenced my other two corp mates in the room with me. Other than that, I am a random rambler here on the podcast, and I don't really forum warrior. I kind of forum stalk people, I guess, and that's about what I do. That and I try to help everybody understand that there's something special about understanding that as long as you can make fun of Zell, you will always feel good about yourself.
Yes, that's true. And I'm Pokey Draven from OSG Planetary Operations, the third member of the Corp, and writer, editor, and co-host on the Biomassed blog and podcast.
And a little shit.
And a little shit, yes. But we'll let Jay get back to doing his thing.
Well, I don't know if you're like 6'4", dude, so I don't know if that's little, but you're at least a moderately sized shit.
Maybe a turn, maybe. We'll see.
Touche. All right, so folks, on to our normal segment here, the lead segment, which is a CPM update. And tonight we've got 2 CPM members, Cross2 and Sarai Zell. So, Sarai, I'm going to toss this one over to you and Cross, so if you mind taking it away.
Yeah. So the big thing this week is that the CPM2 has been confirmed by Frame. So we can kind of say that this has obviously been one of our big conversation topics with them over the past, several weeks. I've talked to Frame about, if you guys remember, one of my earliest posts was on the blog was about changes that I think should be made to the white paper. We have had that conversation with CCP, and I don't know what will or won't happen with it, but I'm hopeful that things are doing well with that as well. So.
Okay. Well, and I think that is definitely a noteworthy tidbit of information that there's an official CPM2 announcement for somewhere in the July timeframe. So roughly a month-ish from now. Is that when the elections are going to be held, or when they're going to formally open folks to sign on as candidate?
So we don't have final dates on stuff yet, so I couldn't tell you for sure.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No, I was just trying to get a grasp on the timeline to some degree. But like you said, that's actually probably a good thing. So one of the things I would like to point out to everybody is on the biomass.com /biomass.net website. One of the things that we've been doing, and it's really been spearheaded by Sarai and Pokey, is that what we're trying to do is have a series of basically blog entry interviews for all of the candidates. And I think we've got some folks have already put theirs in. We've got a couple already posted, right, Zell?
Yeah, we've got 2 of them so far.
Okay, and they would be who?
Crossatu and Ripley Riley.
Absolutely, and that's what we would like to do is be a good centralized venue for folks that are interested in learning about who wants to be a CPM member and maybe a little bit about why they want to be a CPM member. And obviously, now that the sort of the season has started, if you will, if you are out there listening to the podcast, and we know all 25 people that play Dust usually do listen to the podcast, that if you're interested in running for CPM2 and you want to hop on and kind of have a conversation with us, or more likely really just have a conversation with the community, which we can help you facilitate, please get a hold of either Pokey, myself, or Soraya. Just pinging any of us in game or back here on Skype or what have you. And we'd love to have you on, just at least to talk about what your thoughts are about the CPM and sort of why you want to partake of that particular chalice of poison. So on that note, I think we've got. Let's see. They have, just so I'm correct here, Zell. They have not actually opened for receiving like candidate packets, right? It's just they've announced
no.
it. Okay.
Yeah, it's just Frame has confirmed that there will be a CPM2 and that stuff should be in July.
Okay. No, well, that's still pretty awesome, man. So I think
Frame has also stopped being French and 52, which is good.
Well done. That was a bit odd, although he does wear a mean baseball hat.
His Skype got hacked recently, and there was all kinds of buzz about what was happening with it and why, and had to quit the company and all sorts of silliness. But no,
Really?
It was just a Skype issue.
I totally, yeah. Well, I assume you guys probably saw that more than the vast majority of folks in the community. All right, let's see. So, anything else on the CPM2 we want to chat about? So, who has actually formally announced that they shall be running? I know, obviously, Ripley and Cross is going for a reelect. Ripley's going for an election. Zell, you're not running, are you, brother?
I am not.
Okay. I think, let's see, who else has actually said they are in fact going to run from CPM1?
Has BAM and BAM Havoc and that group of hooligans announced that they're going to run?
I don't think so. I've heard a lot
Formally,
of people
I don't think so.
other than BAM saying that they wanted BAM on there, but I don't remember BAM actually saying it.
I also saw briefly on the forums. I think I looked at the initial post that Frame did in general discussions, I believe, and I think one of the first responses was Jolly Roger saying that, it might have even been on Twitter, was Yo Jolly Roger saying, "Oh, I need to go make some propaganda or something." So I didn't know if that was just a joke or if he actually was running or not.
I haven't seen Jolly in a long time.
The last tweet I saw from Jolly, he was talking about people he would like to see on CPM and specifically saying he didn't want to be. But who knows, that may change.
Gotcha.
Yep, that's fair. Let's see. Is Aeon running?
He is not, at least last conversation I had with him.
That certainly downplays my ability to get entertainment out of this year's election season.
Breaking Stuff is in or planning to be in, as far as I know, as of this time. And though she may stab me for it later, I think that Zarya is in as well.
I would vote for Zarya, absolutely. She is, and by the way, just so everybody's tracking what I'm about to say, I made this comment earlier to Merc that I think of the 7-ish CPM slots, and I assume there's still 7 for the next election, that you can easily fill half of them with really high quality people that don't run or wouldn't put their name forward for whatever reason. And Zarya is somebody that I think you'd have pretty strong backing from the community. Very level-headed, very solid player, and she's also really sharp in terms of how she can communicate things. So I would love to get her enlisted onto a platform to be a CPM2.
Yep, I absolutely agree. I've been, asking her to consider it for a long time, ever since we spent 4 hours debating at one point, and it's like, wow, okay, you know what you're talking about, and you're capable of doing that without becoming hysterical or trolling all the time. So this is something you should do because you'd be good at it.
Yep. No, I think that's pretty fair. I thought I saw that Breakin was. I guess I couldn't really tell if he was trolling or serious, which is normally where I fall with Breakin on a lot of things. But so it sounds like he is going to run then.
Yes, as of this time, to the best of my knowledge, he is in. Whether that holds true throughout, as we saw some candidate bleed last cycle, is obviously remains to be seen. But as of now, he's in, from the best of my understanding.
Okay, all right. Well, that'll be pretty good. I mean, like I said, the guy definitely. I mean, he does know his stuff, but he is. I would say that he is a friction point, and I think that'd be a fair assessment. Just based on how he normally communicates to folks.
He's what would happen if someone cloned Pokey and infused him with the general attitude of the Mittani.com.
That's relatively fair.
Yeah,
I mean, Breakin's very. He's very technically adroit in terms of understanding different things. Now, I disagree with him a lot of stuff, but he can back up what he's saying, and he will at least describe a logical pattern of why he is viewing something in a certain way. So
I would say his
a good thing.
spreadsheets rival Rotati's. I've seen some huge spreadsheets that he just spent hours and hours of making them just to explain a single point.
If you want to know the truth, he actually copied Rotati's spreadsheets and basically did a lot of number work on there, but I think the background on the actual functions was Rotati that he was using.
And that's actually a savvy side point as far as potential CPM work. Rotati's spoken publicly a lot about the idea of low-hanging fruit and the value of doing something rather than discussing a theoretical something that isn't really within reach. So the most effective means of getting stuff done, and generally speaking, of course, when talking to CCP, is finding things that are generally within reach, that are a lot easier to grasp and execute, as opposed to massive overhauls or things that require a ton of dev time. So using what's already been put forth by CCP and altering it in minor ways for a large effect is a pretty effective way to go about doing CPM style work. And I guess he's got that going for him if he gets himself elected.
Yeah, I've spoken with him a lot on many occasions, and he's like you said, he's a point of friction, but he's got his head in a good place. He does put forth a lot of work to design or just try to balance things, and he definitely has a very rational method about going about it. So I can definitely appreciate him in that regard.
Anybody else from CPM1 rerunning other than Cross?
Denny Fleetfoot and SMB have both said that they're confirmed. Zatara has, as of now, said he is not doing it, and Iron Wolf Saber refers to himself with 3 question marks whenever the issue is raised.
Well, that's
classic Iron Wolf.
Incredibly apropos. Okay. Well, I guess one interesting question I have is: has anybody heard of any really new or folks that you've never heard of that are actually look like they're trying to gear up to get involved?
Not as of yet, at least from my corner.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same people that I've seen from either the last election or the ones that are fairly popular or well-known on the forums, so no one new that I've spotted.
Yeah, I was mildly interested to see if one of the South American players would get in, because they would have a pretty good voting block if they did.
I think your newcomers tend to show up more once the official announcement and submission method is out.
I'm wondering if we'll get a dark horse from somewhere in our Japanese community, because there's a fairly substantial segment of them that are active, and that would be a rather locked-in voting demographic by and large, just because of the linguistic barrier.
Well, but the other thing you have to understand is that this all CCP business and CPM business is conducted in English, so that's obviously.
Look at it this way: we know about many of the people running because they are connected to us, because they tell us on Skype or other channels. The people who aren't well known are probably not that connected.
Yeah, well, it's just like what happened with SMB in the last cycle. You can have people who are not active in certain circles or as high profile that still have substantial roots in a sub-portion of the community, and that can be enough to get you the votes you need.
Mm-hmm.
That's also true.
Look, you have to look at the fact that we had under 1,000 votes last CPM election. I suspect that the voter turnout could potentially be smaller, So, having a dedicated base to actually vote for you could very well secure an election quite easily.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, other than Judge, who kind of was through the curve, like you needed what, 70, 80 votes to get in, something like that.
So you need I think I got in at 62 votes. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like that's that's definitely not a hard stretch. If, like, as Kane noted, and by the way, Kane's in the room. We'll get to an intro for him and another guest, Lethargic, in a moment. But yeah, that strikes me as that if anybody's got any relative, modicum of organization, that they'll be elected. Which is, I guess, sometimes good and sometimes bad. And I don't compare this to how Eve works. That's a totally different animal than what we're doing here. But it's there's a small part of me just because of how small the player base is. I would almost like it if they would do it sort of like how they did CPM 0, where they like, hey, you can apply, or hey, here's like 10 or 15 people. If you're interested, please contact us. We'd like to interview you, and just pick people that they know can interact and provide good feedback. As much as I like the idea of the quote unquote, community, elected rep, I think just based on the size of the size of the player base, I would not necessarily be opposed to a fairly transparent but almost interview / selection process for it.
One of the core principles of the CPM is to be an elected body. I can understand CCP can interact with whoever they want to. So, I mean, if CCP decides they want to go out and directly interact with somebody who's, a person in the community, or someone that they recognize doing X, Y, or Z, then they'll do that. And Rotati has shown that they'll do that,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No,
so,
I'm with you.
I mean, so to me, the function, I mean, the CPM, it's the players' voices who vote, basically saying these are the people we want to be on the inside and know about the NDA and know what's going on about the future of the game that maybe we aren't, that CCP isn't prepared to share with the greater community, and at the same time, the watchdog agency element of it as well. I mean, to me, to have that kind of credence to it, it still needs to be elected, even if it is a small number of players. I mean, the thing is to get, I mean, it's also kind of on CCP's shoulders a little bit as well to get a higher voter turnout, with writing out a dev blog, some things like what they've done with the CSM before is had, devs come out and say, hey, this is what the CPM has done for us as developers, that kind of stuff. CSM in that case.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. I acknowledge the community elected component of it, but it's one of those where I don't know. I think they could probably figure out who they're going to talk to, and what you don't want to do is through association not be as transparent with parts of the CPM as you would want to be, I guess, is my thought on that one. Real quick, if you don't mind, Kane, Lethargic, if you guys could do quick intros. Kane, if you could go first, please.
Kane Spero, former member of the CPM and head of the Negative Feedback Alliance.
Lethargic, former member of Sever True Blood and others.
Okie dokie. And Lethargic, I believe you are running for CPM2. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, awesome. I'm glad you were able to join us tonight, man.
No problem.
Okay. Let's see.
Jumping back to the prior topic real quick here, I think there's possibly some middle ground as well, because while the CPM in its present state as an elected body is a positive and useful thing, I think that there's still room to grow either a parallel or an extended program that would have a lot more of the focus group or ad hoc aspect to it, and that there would be quite a bit of value in that and in having it formalized, because while Kane points out correctly that CCP can engage with whoever they want, having a process in hand that would allow some people to get under at least selective NDAs or contextual ones would be pretty useful in bringing more folks into an active role, as opposed to touching base kind of more sporadically, as is the case right now.
No, I could see that. You could have like your core membership, which would be your CPM, and then effectively what you do is you have folk targeted focus groups, like the PC work that Ratati's doing is probably a good example. It's probably bigger than what you'd want, but if you wanted to bring in, he could ask, okay, hey CPM, who are the top 10 experts on X, whatever X is, and then you guys help figure out who that is, and then actually actively recruit into his focus group. One or two of you sit down on it as sort of monitors and or scribes or whatever, to help at least understand the holistic picture from a player perspective. That's actually not a bad mechanic, if you laid it out that way.
But whether or not they need to actually be under any kind of NDA, I think the NDA is there to allow CCP a little bit more freedom in terms of sharing information. But I think whenever it is possible, there needs to be not those kind of bounds. There needs to be open discourse. Even if you have focus groups and stuff like that. I think the PC think tank, I think was a good execution. I mean, people in the think tank kind of it was kind of understood. You don't necessarily need to be going out and publicly posting a bunch of stuff, but talk to people about it, get feedback, that kind of stuff. I don't know. I think the CPM being under NDA is probably enough. I mean, something where an NDA could be applicable would be as if we ever actually got an ISD department for Dust to actually kick off.
Yeah, well, it all depends on the topic for sure, and things like think tank wouldn't explicitly require NDA, but there are moments. I mean, for example, just as a total hypothetical, with the sidearm redesign that happened, if Ritati had decided that he wanted to talk to, the main users of said sidearms and pull the data for those, he could have theoretically, at that point, put them under NDA for those specific sub things and gotten the primary users of a given aspect of the game in during the design phase, even if that stuff was not far enough to be released outside of NDA.
Well, I think that sort of thing is important too, because I've never believed that the CPM needs to be an expert in any particular field. So it's more important that they understand who can give accurate feedback. And so I think, like you said, tasking them with going and finding experts in a said field to actually give accurate feedback is important. And if they can get a more focused group that's kind of away from, the forums, which can also turn to a shitstorm pretty quick, I think that would be pretty good. I mean, that way you're assuring that the information you're getting is actually getting accurate and not riddled with a lot of the issues we see on the forum posts. Now, that has to be NDA'd or not. It's convenient if you can have an NDA because you can perhaps kind of push the limits a little bit about what you're talking about to those selected players. But at the same time, you also raise a good point that you don't want it to be too restrictive in that it does prevent gathering proper feedback in that regard.
I think that's probably a pretty fair assessment of it. It's just, I think there's a lot of different angles with it in terms of what do we see the direction of the CPM going. I mean, right now, the reality is, for a lot of the technical feedback pieces, I think CCP Ritati is probably as open as you're going to get in terms of getting input and then dialoguing with the community writ large. So, from that aspect, there's, like you said, there's ample people that they can talk to. So I think that's probably a good thing. Not really sure. I guess other than sort of that quiet internal soundboard of like, if we release this or if this goes or how does this work, you have that smaller pool of people that you can have sort of more pared down discussions with. That's good. But I think that's the part where that's why I think I'm not going to say I lean towards it, because it's more along the lines of I would accept having them choose players that they felt that they could interact with on a more intimate basis, as opposed to letting the community vote some people in for that role, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of cutting down the noise, I think, because, I'll quote the HAV rebuilds discussion as an example, that there was some individuals in there that were so disruptive that Ritati was threatening to ban them because they were literally derailing the discussion every 5 seconds, that nothing was getting done because of it. And so I think in that regard, sometimes at least being able to make sure that the pool you're pulling from is going to be actually on board with progress, rather than just random noise, which does pop up from time to time. I think that's also pretty important. So I can see where you're coming from in that regard.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. So any other broad thoughts? Well, I guess let me ask the open-ended question, and this is probably more towards Cross and Soraya. If you were to hazard a guess, what would you say what are the things that are likely to be different in the CPM2 year, if you will, than they were noticeable? What would be the differences that you project based on how you see things tracking with the game, with the CPM relationship with the community and with CCP? What are the things that will be different for the next guys that you guys either didn't experience, or maybe that they're gonna have to revisit in a way that you would maybe prefer them not to?
Well, let me go ask Mr. Decker and Hilmar really quick what their ideas were, and I'll get back to you in a minute. Now, that aside, I think that there are some things that have developed as far as internal dynamics and communication that were perhaps not as gelled in certain ways as they were to begin with. I know that CCP's Frame and Rattati are both a little bit more in their stride, I think, as far as what they would like from interactions with CPM and what they don't find useful than they were at the beginning of our term. I think that some of the CPM2 will potentially be surprised if they come with a lot of preconceptions, because it's not a deeply, deeply formal environment, but it is a very active one. And there are fewer CSM-style weekly meetings or anything of that nature than there are frequent conversations, requests for information, minor tasks as far as go seek this out or figure out feedback on X, Y, and Z, or break this for me. There's a lot of that. Here's an idea, show me everywhere that it's going to be exploitable. And I think that process is probably the biggest shift, at least in my view, between 1 and 2. It's just how focused and confident the devs themselves are in what they're looking for in their interactions with the CPM.
It's pretty fair. Soraya, your thoughts?
It's tough for me because there's probably a few thoughts I would share if I could, but I can't. I do think that I think it'll in some ways it should be pretty smooth, but in others I think it might be a bit of a fight. For the CPM, I think there's always a continual need to define why it's relevant and important. It's sometimes CCP may know how they want to interact with the CPM, but it may not be the extent of how they need to.
Yeah. Okay. I'm still trying to decipher all of that, by the way.
Well, there are lots of holes, and I'm sure that Zell and I could both go on at length on a number of subjects if lawyers would not eat us alive for it. But at least for me, and I don't want to put words in the mouth of any of my council bros here, but I think that the major uptick in all of it is that you need to be clear and firm about what you think and why you think it. You need to remain professional when you're told something is simply going to be done a different way, because that will happen. And you need to be proactive, is one of the big things that I was expecting less of, I suppose, even from my prior community experience. It was less of a task-oriented environment than it was a show where you can provide use, show how you can provide use, and seek ways to be active if you want to, sort of situation. And that, I don't know. I mean, it was an adjustment for me, but I think it also goes a long way, because the people who want to be active and engaged and make a contribution will, and the people who don't, or who fade out in one way or another, are not going to have a major void that they're creating in many ways, because they're not being given specific responsibilities that they then aren't fulfilling.
No, I think that's probably a fair way to approach it. Like I said, it's kind of interesting watching how this is sort of developing. If assuming things track along, what do you think are the most significant topics or areas that will end up facing the CPM2 folks, starting, I guess, fourth quarter of this FY, and then moving into the rest of their term?
Everyone knows my favorite topic is getting the game ported, but apart from my perpetual harassment of the devs, which they're gracious enough not to beat me over, I think that my next probably 2 or 3 topics are actually still NDA related, but beyond those, we're probably looking at skill polish as one of the main things, because that's going to take some time and some significant effort, it seems, and it certainly is a thing that needs to be done, whether that be by potentially adding some more racial weapons, as might help the commando, or overhauling the bonuses themselves, as is probably needed for both the logistics and assaults. There's a lot to be done with the racial skills right now, because in most of the roles, they're not really providing equal value between all of the different races, and ultimately that has to be addressed.
Okay, no, I think that's a pretty fair way of approaching it. Zell, any thoughts on that? One or two of the most significant topics you think will face the CPM2?
I'm not going to comment at this time, no.
You guys are really, really annoying to talk to. I just want you to know that.
Try being on the other side of it.
Well, and so here's the thing. I've tried to talk to you about this previously, and I even gave you a demonstration on how to do it, Zell. I asked Cross the same question. He says nothing as well. Like, literally nothing. But it sounds like he's saying something. You just say nothing. At least say something.
So here's what you could say is you could say that I'm more honest about the fact that I just said nothing, because I literally just told you I said nothing. That's honesty. You're not getting that honesty from Cross. Cross is wonderful at leading you on here, but he's not giving you anything. I'm giving you the truth.
Yeah, the difference is you think that's leading us on, because here's the thing. Like, the reality is you guys, like, as a group, you use the NDA shield like more than any 5 people I have ever met on the CSM and Eve put together at the same time. It's like fucking Wonder Twins' power of NDA shield unite, form of fucking impenetrable wall of interview sound. Holy shit. But anyway.
From my side of things, with how much I love to communicate and how gabby I am, it's more like the NDA ball and chain or the NDA yoke than it is the NDA shield.
I mean, you gotta bear in mind that when we were all at FanFest, we were like chatting back and forth, like giddy schoolgirls all the time, because that we could actually speak to people.
Well, that's fair too. Okay. Goodness gracious. So, okay.
I'll throw one more on there, since apparently my comment on already known information is not truthful, according to Soraya. PvE. PvE is something that I have not ruled out as a possibility. Look at me talking as if I'm in charge of something. And that I think would be enough of a value to the game in general that it's something CPM2 could definitely pick up and kind of run with and look at the potential for.
But then do you think that that's something that's feasible on the current platform? Assuming that the game doesn't get ported to either PC or PS4.
Actually, yes, I do think that there's some potential for that to work out, even on the PS3. Although, ultimately, we have to go to another platform. That's been true since, closed beta, everyone's known it. It just is becoming more and more pertinent that it needs to happen soon.
Gotcha. So
okay,
then,
all right. Bait, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So then, to follow up with that, Cross, to what extent do you think that any kind of PvE is possible? What do you think we'll see if we had such a feature on the PlayStation 3?
Well, resource management is obviously a key thing, so we're less likely to see the open world, sort of PvPvE that happens in EVE and some other sandbox style things. But I think that more scripted PvE, just due to the nature of how resources are allocated, is probably a lot more feasible. So things like, a survival mode or a resource harvesting mode, something that's a little bit more, wave or objective oriented, seems like it would probably be a lot more feasible. Now, I say that not as someone who knows the engineering behind it or claiming inside knowledge on it, just assessing as a gamer based on what I've seen other games be able to pull off in similar environments.
Fair enough.
Okie dokie. Let's see. So now that we've covered that big roundabout sort of topic, kind of curious, Cross, why are you running for CPM2 again? Why are you sticking with it?
Well, the two major things. One is that I've had several different people say that I should continue with it, which kind of put the bug in my bonnet to at least consider it, which, wasn't necessarily a thing I was actively doing until that point. And then secondarily, one of the major elements of my prior platform, and frankly the most vital thing that's going on, in my opinion, right now, is the concept of a port. And there's only so much that a CPM can do as far as saying, hey, this is important, and having that matter, of course. But anything that I can do, even if it's work on other subjects and aspects to give the devs some more breathing room to think about it, is a positive in my book, because I like the game. I want there to be a game regardless of how it's being developed or what direction it's taken. And without a port to a next-gen system, be that, PC, or as some have said, Wii U, or, PS4 or
Windows
Xbox.
Phone. Windows Phone.
Or the Windows Phone, as Zella's campaigning for. Whatever the next gen platform may be, having one is important to the continuation of the game, and thus the value of the work that's gone in so far. So that's something I really want to see happen before I leave office.
Okay.
Legion is a collectible card game now, right? So that would work on Windows Phone pretty well.
It's a tower defense game now.
Oh, we switched it to tower defense? When did that happen?
It's a tower defense card game. It's a new direction they're taking with it.
I thought it was a choose your own story novel.
It's that too. It's a choose your own tower defense card game.
I could have a whole show where we could just have you explain how this version of Legion works. That'd be really interesting.
I'll be honest with you. I guarantee you that that little riposte and parry right there that everybody heard was literally almost word for word said somewhere in a CPM office at some point, with whiteboards and people with eager looks on their faces and markers in their hand. I guarantee you.
Basically, Legion is now the computer game Hand of Fate. It's just been ported into EVE lore.
Okay.
Companion app.
Well,
What was that, Bait?
A companion app. It's not a game. It's an application.
Oh dear God, the thing this is hilarious.
It's going to be for the Vita too.
Vita.
Well, the thing is, actually, if you put the game on PS4, you could just do remote play with your Vita and actually access the Neocom as you would if you were, actually had a Vita app like we were promised.
That would be cool.
Do they still make those things?
The Vitas?
Yeah.
I think they make them. They just haven't started making games for them yet. But they are really great for watching videos.
So that's a little bit like the PS4 then, huh?
Yeah, actually, it's the PS4 is a little step ahead. I mean, granted, it's a little older, but they're working on it. They're thinking about actually making games sometime in the next 10 years or so.
I have a Vita. It's a really almost frustrating device because the L3 and the R3 are a touchpad on the back of the pad. It's also the L2 and the R2 are also on said touchpad on the back of the pad. So basically you have a touchpad that's divided into 4 parts, which are more or less buttons that you just have to touch, and even then they're finicky. As far as the capabilities, I would say that it's somewhere between the PS3 and the PS4 as far as, processing power and whatnot. But I have a couple games, and it's all right.
It's more than a toaster, less than a supercomputer.
Exactly.
It's frustrating for me because it's actually a cool little device, and it's completely filled with ports of PSP games for me because I haven't found anything that I really want that's actually a true Vita game. It's driving me nuts, but I've just kind of given up and said, oh, it's a nice way to play my PS4 remotely, and that's pretty much what it does now.
I tried playing Dust on it, and it was a nightmare just because I needed the L3 and the R3 and the R2 and the L2, and it was just... If you've played with the Vita, it's not very responsive, I guess.
But it works.
Maybe with the PS3, I found it's actually pretty decent on PS4 remote play. I wouldn't want to do anything competitive with it, but it's manageable for what it is.
I really wouldn't mind some kind of companion app, though, for Dust. To just be able to, especially for corp managers.
What would be really awesome is to have the equivalent of EveGate, so I can actually check my Dust mail through a browser. That would be swell.
Yes.
You know what the funny thing is? As far as I know, they're either very close, or I know there may have been some divergence at some point, but the Dust forms and the E forms should be basically the same thing. And it's literally, to me, I think it's just like a switch. Maybe a little more complicated than that, but essentially just like a switch. I say, hey, Dust people can have EveGate. The only problem is maybe people spamming or something. But maybe they say you have to have loyalty rank X to get EveGate.
I think I heard at one point that there was some sort of snag within Crest that they wanted to change something or streamline something or turn something on before that happened, and that hasn't been a thing within Crest that was done yet, whatever the widget was.
Yeah.
You could put that war barge on the companion app. Get it out of the Neocom.
Yeah, being able to log in and collect stuff on days where you can't log into your PlayStation would be nice.
Well, I mean, one of the things I think they really should look at is no matter, like, even if you assume that there is going to be a port, and even if you assumed it's on the PS4, what I would really strongly recommend that they do is take all of the forum and the webmail hosting shit and just excise that from the PSN network and figure out a way to do like you can use your PSN or whatever, or you make them establish like an Eve style account and just keep it all on CCP's side and not have it go through the PSN piece. I think if they could do that, they would be better off in the long run. If you assume that they're going to have a port to something, if it's on a PC, certainly they need to do that, or they would. And if it would be on a PS4, I would still recommend that they, like, literally just lop it off out of PSN. Other than you can perhaps sign in or do a parallel sign in through it. But I would try to run all of my offline stuff through CCP's in-house type activities.
Yeah, and that seems like something that they've talked about and really should do. I mean, I don't know how they would, they'd have to work out the logistics of getting everyone's accounts converted. But, back 2 FanFests ago when they were talking about the whole single sign-on for all of their games on one PC client thing, that obviously requires some sort of more CCP account. And it'd be nice to see things like Orem, which is really just your real money, to usable across your Eve and Dust accounts, though they'd have to normalize those values and etc. It just seems like if they're they have Dust and they have Eve and they're working on Valkyrie, it just makes sense to me that they start to look at kind of the Blizzard approach where you're have logged into your account with that company.
Well, yeah, I mean that's almost in a weird way. It's like a Steam or a GamePro style.
Steam's obviously it's meant to support games out of other companies, whereas you have if you look at the Blizzard launcher, they have specifically these are all the games, and if you don't even even if you don't play some of those games, they're listed there. It's like just click here, and we'll install it for you. There's a ton of cross promotion between their games, in terms of, for instance, I've played enough Heroes of the Storm that I get a mount and a pet in WoW, and I get a card back in Hearthstone, and those are all vice versa. Basically, every one of their games has a reward you get in the other game for playing enough of it.
No, I think that's a lot. I think that's okay too. I like that. I think that would actually go more towards some of the long-term vision stuff that we've heard Hilmar saying on more than one occasion. And again, this is somewhat even agnostic of whether Dust finally dies its gives up its last breath at some point and there's no replacement for it or whatever, and then it's just Eve and Valkyrie, and then they start looking for other things. I think it would be a good choice for CCP to migrate a lot of their non-gameplay or non-in-game material to a single location, which then, if you think about it, that's just shared advertising and interest for their other products. That was the one thing I always just really wish that they were able to do is get more cross-pollination in terms of their customer base and make it attractive to do so. And I think your idea of normalizing Orem across games, that could be like the CCP currency du jour for any of their games, because I suspect Valkyrie will have some level of additional monetization in it utilizing Orem as well.
Only thing that you have to consider though is, well, actually no, never mind. I was just thinking about how in Eve you could buy things that are purchased with Aurum with ISK, but you're already kind of starting to do that in Dust with player trading. So never mind.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfectly fine, and I would offer that a lot of the work that you see people in the community doing on Trello, reference the trading pieces, could easily be done. I mean, if you look at the Eve forums, there's like whole fucking swap meets going on the forums there.
I still hope that at some point we get a little bit more of a robust trading system. And I know we kind of implemented what was available to implement in terms of capabilities and stuff.
Okay, all right, that's fair. I did. Let's see. I did want to ask a couple other questions real quick, if you guys don't mind. And this is really for Lethargic, if you don't mind. I'm totally not trying to zoom, fucking ninja strike you. I was actually just kind of curious, like why you were interested in running for CPM. I know you'd mentioned it previously, like when you were on the show at one point, that you had some interest in doing some community work in Dust. But I'm just kind of curious, what would attract somebody to a game that's in the current state that Dust is? Why do you want to represent the community to CCP?
That's a very good question. Let me start by saying that I've loved the product that CCP has rolled out since 2003, and that's the Eve universe. And I've been following it and playing off and on. Like it's just the amount of community and meta that goes into this game is something that I've always adored and cherished. And I want to do this because when I played Eve, for like between like 2003 and from when Dusk came out, I never really felt that I had a place on the CSM just because the community was so massively large and it was really hard to get to be known, if that makes sense. And I've been following Dust since its beta, before, like when it was announced that it was going to be a possible thing in Eve, and everyone was going nuts. And I believe that my dedication to this to this game, Dust 514, is excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. I got lost in the question. I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay, man. And like I said, I totally wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I was just kind of curious. It's a question that I have for basically anybody that is interested in doing something like this. Like what about either the game or the community interests you to the point where you're basically going to sign up to do volunteer work? And that was sort of the the piece of it. And and Pokey, feel free, because a lot of people have probably already guessed it by now, but Pokey Draven is going to be running for CPM too, and it's obviously he already does a lot of work with CCP, but that's a fair question for anybody running. Why would you? And it's not really just why would you want to be involved with CCP. It's more along the lines of why do you want to help out either the game or the community writ large? It's it's no drama. I mean, Pokey, did you have any thoughts on it? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I would stress to people is that you should not see it as a position of power or anything like that. It's not a popularity thing. It's a lot of really hard, awful work. I mean, the amount of stress I see Cross go through, we talk quite frequently, and the amount of work that he does, and that I'll help him with a few things every once in a while. I'm sure it's just a fraction of the stuff he's handling is insane. So, I mean, it is literally a volunteer position. It is something that you are going to spend a lot of hours on for something you're not going to get paid for. And you're doing it basically, basically because, you love the game and you want to make it a better game. So, I mean, it's important, at least in my perspective for candidates, that it's not about the position. It's about getting yourself into a position where you can, really dial in and take your talents to good use and actually really help the game progress and get better and assist CCP in giving everyone, yourself included, and the community a better product. And it's gonna suck. It's gonna be really hard. So if it's something that people are just doing because they want to be part of the team, I can't really say that that's necessarily a good thing. I think it's a matter of, do you have the talents or the skills to actually make something happen? And, can you get into a position with the CPM where you can actually facilitate the use of those skills to a greater and larger extent? And I think that's, at least in my opinion, the most important trait for someone who's going to be running.
Yeah, I think Pokey's spot on in that regard. This is neither a campaign to be the next Miss America, nor is it an opportunity to become Judge Dredd. You don't get to run things as CPM, nor is it a vanity project to make yourself look shiny and cool. That's something that is basically work in a more traditional sense and is certainly and unequivocally unpaid. So do it because you want it to be done and you want to try and help things be done well. Don't do it out of any form of ego or illusion that you're going to get some sort of strange behind the curtain perk.
I mean, it's basically an internship with a company that's never going to hire you, is what it comes down to. I mean, you're going to be doing a lot of work.
Well, I do want to specify, you can get hired at CCP if you've been an Eve or Dust player. There is a possibility of getting hired, but keep in mind that if you get hired, you will probably get laid off within a year because CCP's turnover is horrific. So there's that.
Yeah, it's not a company that I would personally want to work for, or any video game company for that matter, given the standards of the industry for employee retention. But the fact of the matter is that you're basically doing a job, and you're not going to get paid for it. And so if you don't treat it as a job, you're not going to perform well, and you're not going to be a good member of the CPM, is my point.
Yeah, by the way, I totally agree with what all of you guys are putting out on that, and that is the interesting thing I find about this is you have to have some level of passion for the game and or the community or whatever, or literally this is just your little sick little hobby or whatever, because the game, like all games, ultimately go away. This one will likely go through a dramatic transformation or go away in the relative near future. Not like 6 months from now, but at some point relatively soon. It is going to go through some sort of significant transformation into something perhaps entirely different or not, become non-existent, and everybody knows that. And then you also have it's a very small, it is a niche game, and it is interesting the amount of work to put into this to be a quote unquote good CPM. That is in and of itself is, you have to think through why would somebody do that? That's what I'm always curious about. Like with Pokey and Cross, to some degree, my impression is it's a social function as well, because a lot of the people that are your online buddies play the game with you, so therefore it is something that is interesting, or at least it's mentally stimulating to you. But that's one of those things where I find I'm always kind of curious about why would somebody put that amount of work into it to literally become a second job, which also then circles back to my thought of maybe they just pick the people that are the focus group style people that they want to get back with, not as opposed to electing folks. By the way, I just acknowledge I totally sound like I'm advocating for that. I'm not. I'm just sort of kind of playing a bit of devil's advocate with it.
Look, at the end of the day, when people who want to be on CPM, it's because they want to be a servant to the community and a servant to the game.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to get at.
It's a service position. It really is. I mean, and you do it because you love the community, you do it because you love the game, and that's why you stick to it. I mean, if you're trying to go in and for any other kind of grandiose purpose, you probably should stop and not do that, because you're just going to hurt yourself, hurt the community, and you're not going to really accomplish anything.
Yeah, I sort of weep inside when I hear people talking about how they're going to get elected so that they can make CCP whatever, fill in the blank, and Should anyone like that successfully get elected, they're just creating a scenario in which they will have an incredibly frustrating year and not do anything that they're planning to do.
Hey, but don't, you can't get it wrong, though, that sometimes yelling will be involved, and sometimes you have to be...
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not all wine and roses, and if you're planning to go in to be just a yes man, you're going to be more or less as useless as if you're planning to go in with some sort of massive EPing and slap CCP around to make them do what you want. Neither one is professional, rational, or constructive, and you really kind of have to check both at the door if you're going to be worthwhile.
Well, not to mention Rattati is very big on, the data. And so if you can actually make a very rational argument that's backed up with evidence, that's the best way to, quote unquote, make him do something, is that, this is what I think should happen. This is why. Here's the evidence showing it. That's how you're going to get things done. It's not just going to be screaming at him saying, because I want this, and I think that that's certainly a dividing line, I think, amongst people in the community, is you have people that are very focused on, rationalizing changes and backing it up with data, and then those who just scream and complain and demand things. And it's just, hopefully we won't see people of the latter actually making it into office, because like you said, I believe they will be completely ineffectual and pretty much ignored by the devs, because that's not behavior that's going to get you listened to in an actual professional environment.
Well, at the same time, though, one of the things the CPM does and the community does is it helps to contextualize data points. I mean, sure, you can look at data and say, oh, well, the data is saying this, but at the same time, you need people who are actually playing the game and who are active in the community to help sometimes provide context to some of that data that people are pulling in.
I think Kane's absolutely spot on in that regard. You just have to make sure that it's someone who's capable of being dispassionate about it, rather than doing what one of the original 7 CPM1 did and get so emotionally invested in a particular subset of the data that you flame out and, become completely useless to the position.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yep. All right, let's see. Real quick, guys, we've been on for right at about an hour. What I would like to do is sort of transition over to shout outs. And one of the things that before we do that, because we are kind of getting into the, like I said, the election stream, there's a couple things I'd like to also note that, Lethal Ytron has announced his CPM2 candidacy as well via Skype. So we'll be sure to have him on for an interview. But what we will actively start doing for everybody is bringing folks on for kind of focused discussions about kind of why they want to be CPM, and we'll invite Bait Bait. Are you running? For some reason, I thought I saw your name on the list.
No, I am not. I'm not eligible.
Okay. So probably what we'll do is Bait and I, who are for sure not running, and perhaps Zell a little bit, we will be able to pose some fairly standard questions to everybody, not unlike the blog that our guys on the Biomassed team are hosting on the website. But it'll be a good way to have a short, focused discussion with the community, and we can sort of help facilitate that. So Lethargic, obviously welcome back on at any time. And what we'll do is we'll schedule something a little bit more formal with you and everybody else that announces themselves as a CPM candidate. And then we'll bring you guys on, and then we can have either small sort of individual sessions with you so that you can kind of describe sort of what are the things you're interested in helping out with in terms of the game and how you want to communicate with people. And we'll do that for everybody that's running. We'll obviously have, Cross and Pokey's on here pretty regular since he's one of the co-hosts. And anybody else that's announced to run. And I know that sometimes we throw some jabs and elbows at people, but we do play this very, very above board. And if anybody wants to go check posting histories on it, you feel free to look me up. I am a very middle of the road person when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I ask everybody basically the same questions. And I tend to ask pointed questions about things I know that folks need to describe to the community based on their own personal styles or previous statements. So that being said, I think what we can do is let's transition to shout outs. And again, open call to anybody that's out there interested in CPM2. Please get a hold of either Soraya Zell, myself, or Pokey, and we'd love to have you on the show. Any saved rounds or last comments before we go into shout outs, gang?
just to clarify one thing that was said earlier, when you said that Zell and I were spearheading the interview process, I just wanted to clarify that I'm not involved with the questions of the interview or sending them out or anything. I only make the banners for the website. So,
and they're standard banners that are basically the same.
They're all identical except for the hidden subliminal stuff I have in the background. But
we've been very careful to keep our running candidate out of the process as much as possible for that.
Well, so here's what I'll do. I'll invite Kevel on to be fully invested in the actual mechanics of the interview process so that we can cry foul at him again. How about that?
Oh, Jesus.
Since I wasn't specifically mentioned, I would like to reiterate that I am not running for CPM2.
Kane Spero running for CPM2. Kane is running for CPM2. It is confirmed.
Oh my god. You guys suck. I don't like you right now.
I'm tweeting this right now.
Half-Life 3 confirmed.
Kane Spero holding up the digits 3 in his Twitter photo.
Wait. We're confirming that Kane Spero has a half-life of 3?
Yes.
That's pretty accurate, too.
That's how 3 months became 18 months for CPM0.
Word. Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and start with our shout-outs. We will start at the bottom of the list, the real bottom of the list this time, so that we don't hose Zell again, as usual, sort of our standard operating procedure here. So, Pokey, if you don't mind, could you lead us off with shout-outs?
Yeah, so just a shout out to all the people running for CPM2. I enjoy elections. I think they're awesome. It's always a good venue for lots of discussion. So those who have announced, I look forward to speaking with everyone, and those who are considering it, be sure to get your interviews in. If you want to contact Zell or Jason, you can get the questions sent to you, and we'll get that posted up on the forums. So thanks, guys.
Sounds good. Zell?
I'm going to give my shout out to whoever hacked CCP Frame's account because it was really funny. But you know, that's my shout out. I don't know anything about him, but there he is.
Okay, roger that. Kane?
Oh, well, actually, I was going to give a shout out to Frame for finally announcing the CPM 2 elections. Thank you. Kudos.
He can have a shout out too. Yeah, that's worthwhile.
Rather than just to his person that nefariously did things to his Skype. Also, just to all the crazy people who continue to play this game and be involved in the community.
Yep, there you go. Cross.
Shout out to the Biomassed editing staff for putting up with my very lethargic article pace, despite all of the various things I've said I will write for them at some point. A shout out to CCP, the devs in Shanghai specifically, for putting up with me harassing them as much as I do, because I really do prod them about the whole post porting thing, probably more than is healthy. And then lastly, a shout out to Breaking Stuff, Ripley Riley, and Zarya Mindir. You should all come on the show and get your questions in, etc. Well, I guess Ripley's already done that, but get yourselves out there and let's have some more talk about CPM2 stuff. I think it'd be great to work with all of you.
Okie dokie. And Cat Merc.
Shout out for sitting awkwardly in the corner, having nothing to add during a podcast.
I was actually, I've got my cat from hell. I'm watching the video of that while I'm talking to you guys and playing around on my computer. So every time you speak, I look up and watch Jackson Galaxy tormenting some cat with a fucking laser, and I can think of you. Okay, Bait.
All right, shout out to my corporation, the Demonic Cowboys. Shout out to CCP for announcing this lovely CPM2. It's going to be great to witness my first election where I actually pay attention to shit. So I'm thoroughly excited. So can't wait to see what's going to become of this.
Goodness, this is where the get off my lawn part comes in, where I'm like, there are many folks probably playing the game that will pay more attention to the CPM elections than their own governmental elections in whatever country they're in. It's frightening.
And they'll have more input in them too.
This is true, but beside the point. God. Okay, and Lethargic.
Shout out to everyone. Thanks for listening to me. I promise to be more coherent and succinct in the future.
Okay. All right, brother. And again, you're totally welcome on anytime, man, to come on and have a chat with us. So for my shout outs, I would like to give a, total shout out to Jon Snow. For those of you that watch Game of Thrones, word. Who else? Stephen Amell from The Arrow. And I hesitate to I don't want to give this shout out to anybody that's on the Suicide Squad cast yet, because I'm definitely reserving judgment about that movie. I'm very skeptical about it at this point, but we'll see. So I will give a
I think
shout
you
out
should
to
be
named
skeptical
later.
about that.
I would. I mean, it looks. It does not look right. If you look at the images of it, it's just a little sketchy.
DC, their movie team they don't know what they're doing. They just don't.
I would agree with that. And I attribute that
Insert
to not
picture
having.
of the dog not having any idea what he's doing here.
Yeah, fair enough. So anyway, yeah, you're right, Dizel. I think their movie line desperately needs like a single person manning the helm for direction and guidance and synchronization, which they clearly don't have. But anyway, no shout outs for Suicide Squad. I will reserve one for them if they deem it worthy later. And I would like to give a quick shout out to Hugh Jackman, who teased a Deadpool cameo in a recent interview. Because as we all know, that no matter what's going on in second quarter of fiscal year 16, there will be Deadpool, and
It wouldn't be a
likely
proper
balance a lot of things in the world's particular karma when that movie comes out.
It wouldn't be a proper X-Men movie at all if he wasn't in it. So yeah,
I'd totally buy that if they would have a Deadpool cameo in the X-Men Age of Apocalypse. That would be pretty legit.
well, I mean they might, but I mean like to have Wolverine appear in Deadpool would just be. I think it just has to happen. I don't think they've done a movie without having him appear at least once.
Yeah, that's fair. I think he's been in just about every Marvelism. Okay, all right. Before we diverge too far, that's the end of my shout outs, since I totally did a ramble right there. I was basically channeling Lethargic. It was great. So on that note, guys, you see that? Hey, come on, man! He's part of the team now. We got to throw a jab at him.
Well, at least you guys stop giving me shit about the quail tank.
Okay, that's legit. All right, guys. So with that, we do appreciate all the listeners out there giving some feedback, and I mean that seriously. We do appreciate the interaction that we get with you guys on Twitter and the occasional email or in-game "you suck" email. Huge fan of those. So if you could go ahead and continue to send those to Soraya and the other normal emails to Pokey and I, if we could continue that trend, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's fine. Soraya at biomassed.net. All your trashy emails, just send them there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So guys, with that, good night and good luck.